Everyone says a man with land and money has everything. But the truth is, wealth can be the loneliest thing a man ever builds. This is the story of Caleb Harlan, a man who learned that his deepest scars could become his greatest strength. Out on the wide Montana frontier, it all began with one quiet knock at the gate. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever watched a woman ride away and known deep in your gut that you were watching your last chance shrink into the horizon? I have. Winter of '82. The cold that day wasn't just sharp. It felt like it could split a man clean in two. She'd already cleared half the distance to the gate when the truth finally caught up to me. For 3 long years, I'd been turning away the wrong women. Silk gowns, polished smiles, rehearsed laughter. I'd gotten real damn skilled at refusing them, turned it into a discipline, maybe even a shield. But this woman, Martha Quinn, she wasn't asking to be rescued. She wasn't selling hope or charm. She was offering something far rarer, an unvarnished truth. Funny thing is, you don't realize how much you need that until it's nearly gone. By the time I understood it, she'd already decided I wasn't worth the fight. Now I sit alone with a glass of whiskey wondering if a man can get so good at guarding himself that he forgets what he was guarding in the first place. Wondering if pride and freedom are just prettier words for being the only fool rattling around a 17-room house. I didn't know how this story would end, not then. Not until the edge of losing everything forced my hand. 12,000 acres. That's what my life's buried in. Every fence post, every acre earned the hard way. I came west in '67 with $50 to my name and a horse that should have been put down out of mercy. 15 years breaking my back for the Northern Pacific, sleeping in drafty line shacks, hoarding coins, while other men poured theirs into saloons. When the panic of '73 hit, I bought land no one else wanted cheap enough to make bankers snort. They're not laughing now. 2,000 head of Herefords, 15 hired hands, the Harlan hands, a house perched above the Missouri River, worth more than most men would ever touch. I built it all believing success could warm a man at night. And for a little while, I let myself believe it did. Then folks found out I had money, and just like that I stopped being a rancher and started being a prize. The cattle didn't matter anymore. I didn't matter. My name faded, replaced by numbers and property lines. For 3 years I fought them off, 32 women if you're keeping track. Railroad daughters from Denver, banker girls from Helena, even a senator's niece from back east spoke French like music and fainted cold the first time she saw blood on a birthing calf. 32 made it past the front door. The rest, near 100 more, never got beyond the gate before the Harlan hands turned them away. They arrived in carriages worth more than my first 100 acres, wearing dresses that could have fed a family through winter. Every last one of them walked through my house like it already belonged to them. Treated my land like scenery. Looked at me like I was a puzzle that just needed the right touch to solve. I sent them all away. Timed them even. Made a game of it. The record was 45 minutes set by a Thornfield girl out of Billings. She stood there staring at my herd and asked, dead serious, if the cattle could be moved farther off because the smell offended her. What I needed wasn't refinement. I needed someone who understood what this life costs, someone who knew the only thing softer than this ranch was the man foolish enough to pretend otherwise. What I was looking for wasn't a wife, it was a partner. But maybe men like me weren't what women wanted partnership with. Maybe they wanted safety, a surname. A tidy story to carry back east about how they'd civilized a wild rancher. A month earlier, after I'd sent Lillian Price sobbing back to Helena, I sat alone in my study with a bottle and finally told myself the truth. I was 38 years old, wealthy beyond sense, and lonelier than I'd ever been at 23, when all I owned was hope and bad ideas. The whiskey naturally had already decided silence was wiser. February 16th, 15 below zero. I was down in the stables checking on a mare close to foaling when I heard hooves crunching over frozen ground. My first thought was a curse, not another one. But when I looked up, there was no carriage, no polished team, just a single rider on a paint horse that looked half used up by life. No velvet, no lace, just dust and cold. She dismounted at the gate, and that's when she caught my attention. She looped the reins with a quick, practiced rancher's knot. Then she rested her hand on the horse's muzzle, standing there a long moment before giving my house so much as a glance. That alone told me more than any introduction could have. I walked out to her. She turned and I saw her clearly. Late 20s, maybe. Plain enough by town standards. But her face didn't need powder or decoration. It was the kind of face shaped by weather and work. A face that knew how to lift itself after a hard day. Her wool coat had been patched so many times its original color was a mystery. Her hands were rough scarred by honest labor. Her eyes, brown and steady, met mine, without a flicker of calculation. "I know you're not looking for a wife," she said before I could speak. "And I'm not looking for a husband. We can leave that idea tied up at the gate. It hit me square in the chest. 3 years of practiced refusals, and here stood a woman using my own words." "Then why are you here?" I asked. "I heard you need someone to run your household." "I need work," she said evenly. "This is business, mister. Nothing more. No coy glances, no false softness, no admiration for the house, just the facts." "You ever handled a place this size?" I asked. "I ran a homestead for 7 years," she replied. "Kept the books, managed supplies, argued with merchants who didn't believe a woman's name counted for much. If you've got men to feed and accounts to balance, I can manage. Most women arrived with fathers and contracts in hand. You came alone." Something crossed her face. Not weakness, something older. "I come with experience you won't find in finishing school," she said. "And no illusions about what this is. And what is that A job? Fair pay for fair work. No promises, no pretending." I should have turned her away. Any woman willing to ride 60 miles in February carried a history I didn't need. But there was something in how she stood straight, unyielding, proud without arrogance, direct without challenge. It stirred a curiosity I hadn't felt in years. 2 weeks, I said. $15 a month. Room and board. She nodded. "You'll run the household, keep the ledgers, handle supply runs from Fort Benton." She didn't smile. She just extended her hand. That was how Martha Quinn walked through my gate and into a life I didn't yet realize was already changing. "If it doesn't suit either of us," I said, "I'll give you 20 extra to get started somewhere else." She reached out her hand the way a working man would. "Then we have an understanding." Her grip was solid, calloused. When she let go, I caught sight of a pale scar running from wrist to elbow. "That from the homestead?" I asked. "That's from my marriage," Martha Quinn said without blinking. She told it plain. He drank. When the bottle had him, he broke things, chairs at first, then bones. "He's dead now," she added. "Broken neck." "I won't dress it up." I didn't know what to say. "The horse that threw him spared me," she finished. "You don't expect that kind of truth from someone you've just met." But there it was, laid out straight as a fence post. "I'll show you the house," I said. For the first 3 days, she moved through that place like a quiet shadow. I rarely saw her, but I always knew where she'd been. Nothing rattled, nothing was forgotten. She never asked to be noticed, never needed to be. When I came in for supper, the food was honest. Beef stew thick enough to stick to your ribs, sourdough bread, coffee strong enough to peel paint. No delicate nonsense, no empty plates. By the end of the first week, winter reminded us who was in charge. A blizzard rolled in hard and fast. 2 calves drifted from the barn, and in that whiteout they wouldn't last till morning. I was shrugging into my coat when she stepped up beside me, already dressed for the cold. "I'm coming," she said. "That's not housework," I told her. She pulled on a canvas coat. "Those calves belong to this ranch, and this ranch is my responsibility." She didn't wait for permission. We found them 3 hours later, wedged against a drift, shaking. By the time we got them back, her hands were purple with cold. She didn't say a word about it. She helped me settle them, rubbed them down, made sure they fed. Later, we sat near the fire, thawing out. She stared into the flames. "I lost my first calf to a storm when I was 19, she said quietly. "I still see its eyes sometimes." That was when I stopped seeing her as a housekeeper. I started seeing her as someone who understood the real price of this life. By the second week, something between us shifted. I couldn't say when it happened. Maybe it was the way she poured my coffee in the mornings, our fingers brushing on the cup, neither of us quick to pull away. Maybe it was how I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't being noticed. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Two people who'd been alone so long, they recognized something familiar in each other's silence. On the 13th night, I sat alone in my study with a bottle sleep nowhere to be found. I couldn't stop thinking about how she moved through my house like she'd always belonged there. There was a knock. "You're drinking like a man haunted by regrets," she said through the door. "Should I walk away?" she added, "or pour myself a measure I should have chosen solitude?" But lonely men tend to make foolish decisions. "Come in." She stepped inside, poured herself 2 fingers without asking, and sat across from me like this wasn't the first time. "What's eating at you?" she asked. "What makes you think something is?" "Because I've worn that look," she said. "It's the face of a man trying to drown a ghost that refuses to stay buried." The whiskey loosened something in me. Or maybe I was just worn out from carrying the weight alone for so long. Her name was Evelyn Moore. 16 years back, I was nothing more than a hired hand with grand ideas and empty pockets. She said she'd wait while I built something worth returning to. I poured another drink. 5 years of saving. Every single dollar. I built this ranch with her face in my mind, imagined the life we'd share. When I finally rode back to claim that promise, I learned she'd married a banker's son 2 years earlier. Said I was too rough around the edges. Too wild. Too much Montana. Not enough polish. "So you became exactly what she said you weren't," Martha Quinn said quietly. "Rich enough that no one could look down on you." I nodded. And here I am. Everything she said she wanted. I laughed once without humor. And still no one wants me for anything but what I own. She sat with that for a moment. "My husband wasn't cruel at first," she said. "When we married, he was kind, had hopes about making the homestead work. But Montana had a way of grinding hope down. When the crops failed and debts piled up, he turned to the bottle. Her fingers traced the scar along her arm. He started blaming her for the failed fields, for not giving him sons, for seeing his own failures reflected back at him. The violence crept in slow, then grew bolder. "Jesus," I murmured. "The night he died, he'd been drinking since midday," she went on. "Tried to ride into town for more whiskey. Couldn't even sit his horse straight. They found him the next morning. Broken neck." She met my eyes. I didn't cry, I felt relief. And that scared me. "The kind of relief that comes from surviving something that should have killed you," I said. She lifted her glass and took a long pull. "I learned something from that marriage," she said. "Love isn't enough when pride gets tangled up with it, and I learned I'm stronger on my own than tied to the wrong man." "Then why are you here?" I asked. "Why not stay alone? Because there's a difference between being alone and being lonely," she said. "And I've had my fill of lonely." Firelight caught in her hair, softening her features, into something unexpectedly beautiful. I stood meaning to add another log. She rose at the same moment, 3 feet apart. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Because I heard about a man who had everything the world told him he should want," she said, and still stood at his window every night like he was waiting for something that never came. The air between us tightened. I recognized that kind of lonely. "What are you offering?" I asked. "Honesty?" she said. "Partnership. Someone who sees you," she added. "Not your land, not your money." I stepped closer. 2 feet now, close enough to see flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "And if I can't give you what you need," she said, "at least we'll stop pretending we don't need anything at all." 1 foot. I could smell wood smoke in her hair, see the steady beat at her throat. "If we cross this line," I said, my voice rough, "everything changes." She didn't look away. "And I don't know if I have more to offer than tonight." "I'm not asking you for vows," she said softly. "I'm asking for the truth." "Can you give me that?" I answered by closing the last step between us. The kiss wasn't careful. It wasn't learned. It carried the weight of hunger and restraint finally breaking loose. 3 years of solitude spilled out all at once, her hands twisted into my shirt, pulling me in. My fingers slid into her hair, steadying myself as much as her. We didn't make it far, only as far as the couch. Her breath burned warm against my neck. My hands traced curves I'd spent weeks pretending not to see. The rest fell away. Clothes cautioned distance, like shedding an old skin. Nothing else mattered. What came after isn't meant for telling. Some things earn their privacy. All that matters is this: we found something in each other we'd both stopped believing was meant for us. Morning came too soon. I woke on the couch, her head resting on my chest, my arm around her waist. For one quiet moment, the world felt exactly right. Then the weight of daylight returned. She shifted, looked up at me. No embarrassment, no regret, just a question waiting. "I don't regret it," Martha Quinn said, "but I need to know what it meant." She sat up, drawing the blanket close. "Am I just your housekeeper, someone you share a bed with, or am I something more?" It was a fair question, and a brutal one. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I didn't plan for this." "Neither did I," she replied. "But here we are." She dressed without a word. At the door, she paused. "Take your time deciding," she said. "Just don't take too much." She met my eyes. "I've spent too many years waiting for men to decide whether I was worth choosing." Fort Benton didn't keep secrets long. By week's end, half the territory knew she was living under my roof. By the second week, the stories had grown claws. Beatrice Wilkes cornered her at the general store, called her a whore in front of God and anyone willing to listen. She never told me. One of the Harlan hands did angry, embarrassed for her. Soon after came a letter from Helena. The bank warned my conduct was putting my credit at risk. Said a man of my standing ought to mind appearances. Then the church matrons arrived, demanding I either marry her proper or send her away. Accused me of leading her into sin. I told them to mind their own souls and shut my door. That night she stood in front of me with her pack slung over one shoulder. "I won't be anyone's disgrace," she said. Her voice was steady, but the hurt showed. "Either I'm your partner out in the open or I walk away. I've already learned what it costs to be half chosen." "Where would you go?" I asked. "I have a cousin in Sacramento," she said. "She's asked me to come west for years." "You'd leave over gossip?" I said. "No." She held my gaze. "I'd leave because you're still standing at that window every night instead of coming to my room. I'd leave because you've never once told anyone in town that I'm more than your housekeeper Martha Quinn said. I'd leave because I deserve better than living as someone's shame." She was right, and knowing that only made it hurt worse. "I need time," I said. Time for what she asked. To decide whether I'm worth the price you'd have to pay. She shook her head. I've already been measured and found lacking by one man. I won't endure that again. She turned and walked away, and I let her. I stood there and watched her ride toward the gate. Same worn paint horse, same patched coat, same proud, unbending posture that had caught my eye the very first morning. And my thoughts went back 16 years to Evelyn Moore, to all the walls I'd built after she chose another life. I thought about the 32 women I'd turned away because they wanted the wrong things. But this one had never asked for my land or my name. She asked for honesty, for partnership, for the courage to stop calling fear independence. And I'd answered her with excuses. The gate stood 50 yards away. Then 40. Then 30. I didn't reason it out. I didn't weigh consequences. I ran. Wait, I shouted. Damn it, wait. She didn't slow the horse. I reached her at the last second and caught the bridle. Please, just stop. She looked down at me, those steady brown eyes holding mine. Give me one good reason. Because I'm afraid I said breath ragged. The truth, raw and unpolished. I spent 16 years convincing myself I didn't need anyone. And then you rode through my gate and proved that was a lie. I tightened my grip. You're the first person in all that time who made me want to try again. And that terrifies me. Fear is a poor thing to build a proposal on, she said quietly. I know, I said. That's why I'm asking you to stay. Not as my housekeeper, not as my secret. I swallowed. As my partner. In everything. The ranch, the talk, the mess of it all. And when the church matrons come back, I went on. When the banker threatens my credit, then it costs me something. But losing you would cost me more. She studied my face for a long moment, searching for doubt, for retreat. I need time, she said at last. Time, I asked. 3 days, she said. You take them too. Think about what you're really offering. Because if I stay for good. She met my eyes. And I won't survive another man changing his mind, not even you. She turned the horse and rode away. And this time I let her go, because she was right. She deserved more than a man clinging to her out of fear of being alone. I spent those 3 days thinking, truly thinking for the first time in 16 years, about building an empire and forgetting to leave room inside it. About her, the way she'd looked at my land and seen beauty instead of ownership, the way she treated the Harlan hands with quiet respect, the way she stood out in the snow searching for lost calves as if they were her own, the way she sat across from me and offered truth instead of performance, the way she kissed me like I was someone worth choosing, not just someone worth possessing. On the third day, I saddled up and rode into Fort Benton, straight to the jeweler's shop. I need a ring, I told Silas Crow. But not something showy. I want something useful, something that'll last. He laid out silver bands set in gold, diamonds that cost more than some men earned in a year. I shook my head and passed them by. You have anything plain? I asked. Just gold. Something that won't get in the way of real work. He reached beneath the counter and brought out a simple band. No stones, no markings, just solid gold made to wear down honest and true. That'll do, I said. I rode back to the ranch before the sun dipped low. She was there sitting on the porch, like she'd been waiting all along. I took the seat beside her. For a moment I said nothing. Just looked out over the land I'd built with my own hands, searching for words that wouldn't ring hollow. I came to Montana 17 years ago, I said at last, with nothing. I paused. I built all of this thinking success would be enough. That if I owned enough land, earned enough respect, I'd finally be worth something. I pulled the small box from my coat. Then you rode through my gate and reminded me that worth isn't counted in acres or cattle. It's measured by what you're willing to risk for something real. I opened the box. The plain gold band caught the afternoon light. I won't pretend it'll be easy, I said. The town's still talking. The bank's still breathing down my neck. And I'm set in my ways. I met her eyes. Stubborn and afraid of failing again. Then I took a breath. But you're the first person in 16 years who made me want to risk it anyway. Not because I'm lonely, not because I fear dying alone, but because when I picture the next 30 years, I want you there. Every step of it. I held out the ring. So I'm asking you, I said. Will you be my partner? My wife. Will you help me learn how to be brave after spending half my life being careful? She didn't answer right away. Then she smiled. Yes. We were married a week later. Judge Amos Reed from Fort Benton officiated. Wade Turner stood with me. Rosa Calder stood beside her. No fine dress, no grand affair, just two people making promises they meant to keep. The church matrons stayed away. So did the banker from Helena. But the Harlan hands came every last one. They brought their wives, their children, turned it into something honest and real. That night, standing at the same window I'd stared out of for 3 long years, I wasn't alone. She stood beside me, her hand in mine, looking out at the same land, but seeing it with different eyes. What are you thinking? She asked. That I spent 3 years turning away the wrong women, I said. And nearly turned away the right one, too. She smiled. But you didn't. No, I said quietly. But I damn near did. What changed? She asked quietly. What made you chase after me? I looked out into the wide, empty dark beyond the window. I realized that dying alone out there, I gestured toward the land I'd spent my life building, wasn't freedom at all. It was just a prison I built with my own hands. I turned back to her. And you were offering me the key. That's why this works, Martha Quinn said, resting her head against my shoulder. We're not settling. She smiled faintly. We're choosing. Outside, Montana winter was loosening its grip. Snow still clung to the ground, but the air carried the promise of change. Was I a fool for nearly letting her ride away? Yeah. Probably. But I'd have been a far greater fool to believe I could have been happy without her. Some of the best things in life don't announce themselves. They don't arrive in silk gowns or polished carriages. They don't come wrapped in charm and rehearsed words. They come quietly, alone. Honest, asking for nothing yet offering everything. And a man is a damn fool if he doesn't recognize that when it stands at his gate. I learned that too late to be comfortable, but just in time to matter. And that more than land or cattle or reputation is what made all of it worth holding on to. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso Legal/Disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process, but every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.